Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the settings that I change whenever I've been getting these renderings that I've been posting on the forum. There's just a few settings that I'm kind of tweaking, and some of the more advanced settings as far as the camera is concerned is basically what I've been playing with. So first off, I want to get this ring positioned kind of how I want it in the rendering. And then I'm going to change my perspective viewport to the Bella view, which gives me a rendered view of that viewport, which is kind of nice because as you make changes, you can see those in real time, which is really nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my render properties panel. That's where obviously all those settings are being changed, and have that kind of ready to go. Now, as far as the materials, metals, stones, any of that stuff, I'm just using the default JewelBeetle materials and assigning them, just like you would in any other way. So the main part of that ring is going to be 14 karat yellow gold. Now, I do have another surface that has got a matte finish gold assigned to it, so I can get the contrast on the top and the details. That's been previously assigned from when I was playing with it earlier, and I'm not going to mess with it anymore right now. So now I'm going to get this positioned. By default, now we've come up with our default ground plane, which is a white ground plane, and the studio environment. But we're going to change those. First thing is I want to set my focus mode. There's two different modes. You can set it to manual mode, which is similar to manual focus on a camera. Or there's object mode, which I don't really play with a whole lot. Sometimes I do. Basically, you would select an object that you want to focus on. Right here, you can see the main, this is the camera essentially, and this point right here in the middle is your focus point. So wherever that point is at is what's going to be in focus, theoretically. So now as I pull that forward, you can see that the front of that ring came in focus because we are in this manual focus mode. Next thing I'm going to say is I'm going to go to our exposure to a manual mode. Again, like having a camera in a manual mode, I can set my shutter speed. I can set my f-stop or my aperture. The higher the number on an aperture, the more that's in focus. I can also set the ISO. And then there's another thing that's really nice is this tone mapping. If we set that to camera response, then the camera response model is modeling similar to what film from a film camera or other modes within cameras would have. So you can play with those different response models and see which one looks good to you. I've used several of them. Probably one of my favorites is the gamma ones, or one at the very bottom. I can't remember. It's a Sony one. That's a really nice one as well. The Sony, yeah, that one right there. So we'll pick through those, see what looks best. We're still going to need to adjust some of the exposure settings, but we need to also look at our environment. We're playing with that a little bit. We'll go ahead and set the size that I want the rendering to come out. And now right here is one of the places you can get to your environment settings. When you click on this button, it brings up your environment settings. We got our default studio environment. It is a basic environment, and that's what I always work with as well. The very next thing I want to do is I'm going to click this button here, and I've downloaded these high dynamic range textures. These are images, like spherical images that have been unrolled, and I've just played around. I've got a couple that are my favorites that I like to use that seems to be giving me good results. This one right here is probably my favorite right now, and so I selected it, and you can see the image in the perspective viewport changed just a little bit. Now down here you can change the rotation of that of that environment if the reflections are acting a little bit funny, or if you need to make some adjustments to it that way. And then also in the perspective, these are hemispherical images. They're spherical images, so we need to set that to hemispherical as well. And then hit OK here. Now, you can see my exposure is not quite right yet, but we're going to play with that a little bit more in a minute. The next thing we want to go to is our ground plane settings. Something I like is the default material is like a plaster material, and I found that Bella car paint is a really nice material, and I just crank it all the way to white because I want a white background. But some of the other settings I've been playing with a little bit too is pull the metallic down some, so it's not quite so metallic and reflective. Give it a little bit of roughness so that there's some texture there, and it's very, very, very slight. And then also pull this slider down here, the candy slider, so that it doesn't have a lot of shine or anything like that, but it gives a nice white semi-gloss ground plane. Now you can see up here, these are the materials, obviously, and then the ground plane where you can go in. This is exactly where we were just a minute ago in doing some editing. And then this is another area where you could get to the environments and change them as well. So there's kind of two different ways to get to this, but whatever way is easier, I guess. The big thing is making sure we've got all of our exposure settings correct now. The f-stop, the shutter speed, the ISO all kind of work hand in hand to give you that. If you don't know a whole lot about photography, you may look up some photography tutorials to kind of get the grasp on that, because I don't have time to go over that at the moment. But either way, I'm just going to adjust my shutter speed a little bit, and then I'm going to leave my f-stop at 22 so that I can get a lot of the ring in focus but still have a little bit of depth of field. If I go way down low with this, one, obviously my exposure changes, so I've got to fix that. But if you would notice, if that f-stop is really low, then very little of the ring is in focus. Just the very top, or that focus point, is what's in focus. So we need to, you can see even just the outer edge where this ring is turned a little bit is out of focus. So we really need to make sure that the f-stop is a higher number, f22, 32, something like that. And now to finish up my exposure, I'm going to change my ISO. I'm going to raise that number, which is essentially the sensitivity of the sensor within the camera, allowing it to let more light in quicker. So I'm going to raise that to get the exposure I want, and do a little bit of positioning on the ring again, just to make sure it's the angle and everything I want. And that in that preview window looks pretty good to me. So it looks like right now, one other thing that I could change is looking at other environment maps. Now these environment maps, I downloaded these a long time ago. I don't even remember where I got them. You can search for free HDRI packs and download a ton of them. I'll try to upload the one that I've been using the most, but again, they're technically not mine to share. So if that's against the rules, then we can just take that back down. But either way, I tend to play with this a little bit just to get the look that I want. And depending on which one they are, some of them give you some really crazy looking reflections and colors, and it just kind of messes everything up. But a lot of these add just a little bit of realism, and they add just a little bit, honestly, of grit to the rendering, so that it's not so perfect, which tends to make it look a little more realistic, because unless a real image has been edited like crazy, then it doesn't look so perfect. So, and then also within these settings, you can go down, and again, I've been playing with the different ones, so I've got to change this back to hemispherical, but you can go down here and you can actually rotate the azimuth and the altitude, so it's the X and the Y directions. So if you need to adjust the way the reflections are working, I tend to rotate those a little bit, looking at the reflections on the piece that I'm rendering. to make sure I don't have any weird dark spots or harsh highlights, those kind of things. I get the angles and everything just the way I want them. And once I get those set, then we're good to go, looks like. And now going to the render tab, looks like we're ready to render, so I'll hit render and wait for just a minute for this to finish up. Real time and rendering with these settings, depending upon the piece, something that does not have any stones in it takes a couple of minutes. Other things that have diamonds and those kind of things in them can take a little longer. I've had 3 and 4 minute renders, which, you know, if you're trying to do several and you're kind of in a hurry, that may be too long. I don't know. But for me, 2-3 minutes each is not that bad. I can sit there and wait on that, or I can do something else even while each one of these is rendering. So, you know, it doesn't take too long, but I'll speed this up a little bit just so we can get to the end of the render and see the final product here. All right, now it is finished, and that's the final product. I hope some of these tips help. I hope I didn't confuse you, and hopefully this wasn't too boring or just kind of outlandish. Just let me know what you think, and if you have any questions, ask. I'll help as much as I can. Like I say, I'm not an expert at all. I've just kind of played with settings and found some that seem to work for a couple of pieces here. Anyway, thanks for watching.